Welcome back. Well, we are delighted to have Michael Wolff here in the studio. Welcome to the Daily Tea, Michael. Thank you so much for coming in
Thank you for having
talk
me.
to us. Now, few people know Donald Trump and the way he and his administration think than you do, Michael. You're obviously a famous American author and journalist. You've written 3 best-selling books about life inside Trump's White House during his first presidency, Fire and Fury, Siege and Landslide. And you've just published a brand new one, All or Nothing, How Trump Recaptured America. The president has not always been the happiest of reviewers of your works, Michael. He responded to this latest book with a post on socials saying, "Total fake job, just like the other junk he wrote." So, Donald Trump, maybe not your first reader, but I'm sure one of your keenest observers.
That's quite a good review from Donald Trump. One waits for that, and you think, oh, is it going to come? And it came.
Yeah. Before we get into the detail of the last, few days and Ukraine and Russia and Putin, just kick us off. You've known this guy for decades or followed him for decades. Just who is Donald Trump and how do people not in America make sense of him?
Just think of him as a showman, the ultimate showman. I often try to explain this to people and say, no, you're thinking of him as a politician. Don't do that. Don't go there. And think of him as a showman, or even more to the point, an actor. He is actually like it. Most actors are kind of, not the brightest people in the world, kind of, in fact, sort of morons. But they have an instinct for something. They have an instinct for the audience. And that's exactly what Trump does. That's what he plays to. And it's important to remember, key, vital, that Donald Trump was the star of a hit reality show for 14 years. This is a kind of training that no politician has ever had, and obviously it's absolute training for our time.
And when you refer to him, the actor point, I think we can all appreciate. There was something particularly performative about the scenes that unfolded in the Oval Office on Friday afternoon with President Zelensky, which we'll get onto in more detail. But there's a debate that rages about, is this guy a genius? Is he indeed a moron? He must be doing something right, Michael, because it was only a matter of years ago that we had written him off after the January the 6th insurrection. People were basically writing his political obituary. He comes back with a much larger support base. It's not an election that can be contested in any way. He wins it fair and square. So there's something about this guy.
Well, I think he is a moron and he is a genius.
Right.
And that's the puzzling whipsaw kind of effect that we're dealing with all the time. And I would go back to that idea of an actor. He's a moron, that is to say he doesn't know very much, and he kind of prevents information from getting in. I kind of see his whole life as a resistance to information, to anyone telling him anything. And I think that goes to, I think there's a lot of issues, and he's fought against that. I can't learn, and I really think that's true. So he forces it back. You cannot tell him anything. He just doesn't listen. He's just, it's a verbal barrage of broadcast and never anything getting in. But at the same time, he has this kind of extraordinary, nuanced appreciation of how people are reacting to him, like an actor, like always scanning the crowd, looking for that point of connection. When you go to Donald Trump's rallies, which, if you read them, seem incoherent. What is this guy saying? If you are there, you see him kind of throwing out things, looking for the response. And then when he gets the response he wants, he just keeps repeating that line and keeps getting that response. Actually, it sort of grows. So yeah, this is a level of genius for, and especially for somebody functioning in this media time of ours. But it certainly doesn't involve the more conventional side, the more conventional craft, you might say, of politics, policy, legislative agenda. All that is really extraneous, if not irrelevant, to Donald Trump.
How different is Donald Trump 2024, 2025 from Donald Trump 2016, 2017?
It's not different at all. I think it's one of the things, the marked things about Donald Trump. He doesn't change. The Donald Trump from 2016 was not different from the Donald Trump of Trump Tower. Trump Tower Donald Trump is the same as Trump White House Donald Trump. Trump White House Donald Trump is the same as Trump of Mar-a-Lago Donald Trump, and which is now the same again as White House Donald Trump. He just stays Donald Trump. Events don't really change him, unlike other presidents who are profoundly altered by the fact of becoming president. Donald Trump is not.
But Fire and Fury, you were talking about the huge fallout, Steve Bannon. Here he's more prepared, is he not? He's come in with possibly some of the scaffolding of Project 2025. He seems to have a greater understanding of executive order. He's used many more of them.
I think that's a conventional understanding of the way a conventional politician would behave and would respond. I don't think that's the case here. I think it actually, you can go back to 2016, Steve Bannon, and Steve Bannon becomes Elon Musk is the Steve Bannon of the moment. Both got the Time magazine cover, both, the would-be stand-in co-president, both the setting the disruptor tone. And, Steve lasted for 6 months, and I think that's probably a pretty fair measure of how long Elon Musk will last.
If we do look at Trump as an actor, was Friday staged? Like, was it an ambush? Was it pre-planned and premeditated? What's your interpretation of those events?
No, well, I think it's important that Trump doesn't plan anything. So I would say he's an improvisational actor, but he was acting. I mean, this is always acting. He even acknowledged that. In some meta way, this will be great television. And that's what he's attentive to. And I'll go back to the reality show. 14 years on the reality show. A reality show, all reality shows are based on one thing, which is conflict. You have to have, that's how you maintain an audience. And if you don't have conflict, you have to just make up the conflict. And clearly that's what happened with the Zelensky meeting, where other politicians would never have gone there because they try to avoid conflict. He just goes for the conflict, understands that it is a great television, and then will give him the headlines and make him the center of attention.
But what about JD Vance's role in all this? Because I find that dynamic so interesting.
It's not interesting. JD Vance is just the lackey. He is just there to do whatever he thinks he has to do to stay within Trump's good orbit.
But he's more of an intellectual than Trump will ever be, right?
Yeah, I think JD Vance seems. I know JD Vance's book, and it's a good book, and he wrote the book himself. So clearly, he is a smart, intelligent person. But I think that he has decided this is his shot, and what that shot requires is absolute submission, obeisance. He has to do exactly what Zelensky did not do. I found it, kind of cringeworthy. You're not being nice enough. You're not. Vance was essentially saying, you're not kissing Donald Trump's ring. He said that because that's what he does. That's what he has decided to do, and I'm sure Vance kind of made this decision. Okay, I know what I'm getting into here, and if I'm going to do this, I've got to accept this is the role I have to play. Now that's not going to work out. Mike Pence did the same thing, and it ended catastrophically, and it will end that way for Vance, as it does for 100% of the people around Donald Trump. Always ends in tears.
So you think Musk, JD Vance, is that going to be the same for Shapiro?
100%.
Rubio?
Yeah.
100%.
Will that be the same for Rubio?
Yes, absolutely. Nobody comes out alive.
Wow.
Given Donald Trump's lack of knowledge, as you put it, or saying that he's a moron who doesn't want to listen to information, how much does he understand the relationship with Ukraine and with Putin, and actually have knowledge of diplomatically where he needs to get to?
Zero.
But
or at least the most surface understanding.
But he does clearly have some degree of connection with Putin in some way, and sees them in some way as sort of fellow travelers against the establishment.
Yeah, no, I think
he keeps bringing up Putin as a strong man, a man who also was tried to be shaken down by the establishment in America.
It's one of the gaping holes of our time, of the thing that we don't understand. What is the relationship between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump? Congressional investigators spent millions trying to unlock this, and they clearly did open a sizable window into a very strange, probably alarming relationship. When Trump and Putin met in Helsinki in 2019, I think.
It was 2018, I think.
I sat with Steve Bannon and watching that news conference with Bannon trying to figure out what does Putin have on Donald Trump.
Yes.
And I think we're still, that question is back on the table again.
Because the UK audience, I think, was baffled by the outburst about Hunter Biden. We don't know much about this. We don't know much about the background. There seems to be some animus towards Ukraine anyway over that laptop scandal, correct?
Totally. I mean, there's many chapters of this, of the Zelensky-Trump relationship. That's actually another story. That's a story I would love to tell, because I think those two guys have been locked in this relationship for some time now.
So there's more in the background that we just don't know, that has
motivated
what happened
yes.
on Friday, which in itself is fascinating. And then what of Trump and Keir Starmer, our own Prime Minister? Because on the Thursday, we witnessed this extraordinary scene between these two men who, Kamal and I had commented at the time, have literally nothing in common. You've got David Lammy, our Foreign Secretary there, having absolutely traduced Trump while in opposition. Would he care? Would he know? Does he care?
No, he doesn't. He wouldn't know.
Yes, but Lammy called him a women-hating, neo-Nazi sympathising sociopath. Wouldn't he be bothered by that? Would he even know that had been said about him?
No. I mean, if were that relationship and were something to develop there, and would he need to know, somebody there around Trump would point this out. Actually, somebody would only point this out if they wanted to throw a ringer into that relationship. I mean, otherwise, Trump is, he's not concerned with. He's only concerned with himself. I mean, that's always the thing you have to come back to. It's never outward looking. And as for Starmer, I think Starmer correctly, if humiliatingly, understood that this is just a suck-up affair, that there's nothing else that really plays here, which is absolutely true. If you flatter Trump, he will flatter you back. I mean, that is the quid pro quo. It's actually, if you flatter him, then he will flatter you more. Then you have to rise to that occasion.
One thing that does seem to affect Trump is royalty, and this romanticized idea of Britain and his relationship with Britain, and obviously Keir Starmer, the big flourish, the letter signed by the King inviting him for, as Keir Starmer laid on very heavily, an unprecedented second state visit, amazing for the president.
It's all picture postcard stuff. He doesn't really know anything about the United Kingdom, except there's a king, and there was a queen, and there's a king, and it's really childlike knowledge.
Looking forward to this administration, you've said that he's going to inevitably fall out with everyone around him. I mean, just give us your predictions, Michael, for how the next 4 years might play out here, because he's been in office a matter of weeks. He's dominating all of the headlines. He is undoubtedly moving the dial on different issues, be it make Gaza great again, the Ukraine war, all of these executive orders, reversing the entire Biden administration and then some. What are your predictions?
I think it's the obvious thing. This is unsustainable. You can't go on. You can't alienate virtually everybody and not expect there to be some grievous blowback. Obviously he's caught everyone off guard, but he's, I think, profoundly in over his skis. It's a kind of hubris, a kind of, I have to do this. I'm going to do this now because I can do this now, and because I rule by headlines. I don't rule by policy because I'm not that interested in policy. It's making headlines every day. The problem with that, this guy who loves conflict and who thrives on conflict and who rules by conflict, the problem is the conflict comes back to bite you also.
But he's popular, though. He's started, and actually his ratings have gone up. So the American public, the American voter, see something that they like. Isn't there sometimes a danger that some people look at him and say, well, this is chaos, this is not how policy and politics is done. But a lot of voters say, well, we've seen how politics and policy is done, and we don't like the outcomes. We need to approach it differently.
Well, voters, for better or worse, are capricious, and I think at the moment it's an actors or reality television thing. It's capturing attention. Everybody wants to know what's going to happen, but when you start to fire an enormous part of the federal workforce, and that's a lot of people, when you start to put this whole tariff program, which is inevitably going to cost people money. So these are real world effects here. Now, this has only been going on for a matter of weeks, so we're not quite feeling the effects, but we will shortly feel the effects in very dramatic ways. And the capricious voters whose attention he now has their positive attention. He will shortly have their negative attention.
Michael Wolff, thank you very, very much indeed for joining us on the Daily Tea. How Trump Recaptured America, All or Nothing, is out now. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Michael Wolff, great insights there, Camilla. One thing I would say to everybody watching what we're watching, yes, you have to understand Donald Trump in so many different ways. I think the one thing he isn't, even though I love Michael Wolff and I love his analysis, Donald Trump is not a moron. I think he plays a much cleverer game using pantomime to cover up strategic purpose.
There's a tendency, isn't there, among Trump's critics to see one thing that they disagree with and then brand him one thing. This isn't a man who is one thing. This is a man who is something different every single day. And we shall continue to cover his performances, Kamal, on the Daily Tea.